There's a video, private, password protected, shared only with their closest friends. It contains Blake and Gwen's first dance, the song he wrote through tears, the moment they promised forever. But if you watched that video today, you'd see something haunting. Two people dancing, lips moving, arms wrapped around each other, and underneath it all, silence. She didn't just mute a song, she erased the soul of a memory, and she did it alone in the middle of the night after scrolling through old photographs. Kelly Clarkson once sat in that same red chair smiling for cameras while her world collapsed behind the scenes. Now history is repeating itself, and the clues? They're hidden in the quiet. What happened in that house? And what Blake did when he finally saw the silence? That story starts now. Before we get into how Blake found out, which is honestly humiliating, we have to look at the why. Why would she do this? Sources close to them are saying Gwen did this at 3 a.m. That timestamp is crucial. Nothing good happens at 3 a.m. That is the witching hour for overthinking. Apparently, she was digging through old photos. You know how it is. You start scrolling, you see a picture from 5 years ago, then 10 years ago. Maybe she saw something from her days with Gavin Rossdale. Maybe she saw something from early on with Blake that just didn't match up with how she was feeling in that moment. Nostalgia is a dangerous thing when you're feeling lonely in a marriage. It acts like a magnifying glass for everything that's wrong right now. So she's sitting there, likely feeling some type of way, and she decides to edit the wedding video. That is a massive move. It's not like deleting a text. Editing a video on Vimeo takes steps. You have to log in, find the editor, mute the track, and save it. It's calculated. It reminds me so much of what we saw happen with Kelly Clarkson. Kelly sat in that red chair right next to them on The Voice for seasons. She was going through her own hell, watching her marriage fall apart while the cameras were rolling. But Kelly handled it with volume. She got loud. She sang about it. She told the world, "I am broken, but I am still here." Gwen is doing the opposite. She's going quiet. And frankly, that is way scarier. When a woman is yelling at you, she's still invested. She still cares enough to fight. But when she goes silent, that usually means she's already checked out. She's packed her emotional bags and left the building. The timeline here is what makes this so heartbreaking for Blake. He didn't get a heads up. He didn't get a, "Hey honey, I'm changing the video." Nope. He found out the hard way. He was reportedly hanging out with a friend last weekend. You can picture the scene. He's probably having a beer, feeling proud, and says, "Hey man, you gotta see this part of the wedding. The song was perfect." He pulls up the link, hits play, and waits for the music to swell. And then, silence. Just 43 seconds of dead air. Can you imagine how small he must have felt in that moment? He's staring at the screen. His friend is probably looking at him like, is the volume up? Blake reportedly sat there for 10 minutes just staring. He didn't say a word. That is the reaction of a guy who just got the wind knocked out of him. It's the realization that the person you love is erasing you, and they didn't even think you were important enough to warn. It creates this massive disconnect. On stage, Blake is still playing Nobody But You every single night. He introduces it by telling the crowd, "This one is special." He pours his heart into it. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, literally, Gwen has revoked the song's privileges. It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Was that song a promise, or was it just a performance? Because right now it feels like the latter. And that hurts to say because we all rooted for them. That lyric hits a little different now, doesn't it? We've seen Gwen channel her heartbreak into art before. When she split with Tony Kanal back in the No Doubt days, she wrote, "Don't Speak." And then she made him play it with her every night. That was brutal, but it was honest. She forced him to live in the trauma with her. With Blake, she's doing something completely new. She isn't making him play the song, she's removing him from the narrative entirely. It's a passive-aggressive strike. It's like she's saying, "I can edit you out." That is a power move. And you might be thinking, maybe it was just a glitch? Maybe she hit the wrong button? I tried to tell myself that too. I wanted to believe it was just a tech error, but then I heard about the Spotify playlist. If it was just the Vimeo link, okay, maybe we give her a pass. But she also quietly unfollowed the official Nobody But You playlist on Spotify, the one that had their wedding photo as the cover art. That is not an accident, guys. That is a coordinated attack on their shared digital identity. It's the modern equivalent of taking the scissors to the wedding album and cutting his face out. But it's colder because it leaves a digital footprint. Anyone looking closely can see it. She knows people watch her activity. She's been famous since the 90s. She knows that an unfollow is basically a press release in 2024. She wanted this to be seen. Or rather, she wanted the silence to be heard. It makes you wonder what happened in that house to make her want to scrub the soundtrack. You don't do that over dirty dishes. You don't do that because he left the toilet seat up. You do that when you feel betrayed. You do that when the sound of his voice singing about forever makes you feel sick, because you know it's not true anymore. And there is Blake, still playing it loud. There is a tragedy in that contrast. The husband is living in the memory of the wedding, trying to keep the spark alive, while the wife is actively editing the tape. It's a dynamic we see all the time in Hollywood. The public perception is always months behind the private reality. Think about how blindsided we were when Kelly and Brandon Blackstock split. We saw her smiling on her talk show every day. She looked radiant. She was making jokes. We had no idea that behind the scenes her life was being dismantled piece by piece. We look at these celebrities and we think they are immune to the petty stuff. We think, oh, they have millions of dollars, they don't fight like we do. But they do. In fact, the pressure is a million times worse because when they fight, the whole world is watching for clues. Every missing ring is a headline. Every solo trip is a scandal. Gwen knows this game better than anyone. She knows that altering a wedding video on a link shared with friends is a signal flare. She was sending up a rocket saying, help, or maybe, I'm done. She didn't have to give an interview to TMZ to hurt him. She just had to press mute. It is elegant, it is brutal, and honestly, it is incredibly effective. It stopped Blake in his tracks. He's frozen. And that paralysis is what worries me the most. You might be sitting there thinking, okay, so what? It's 43 seconds of silence. Maybe she just likes the video better that way. But in the language of love, silence isn't just a preference, it's the end of the sentence. We have to look at the pattern here because this isn't the first time we've seen this movie in the country music world. Remember Miranda Lambert and Blake? It wasn't a loud explosion at first, it was a slow fade. Interaction stopped. Photos got scarce. Then, boom, it was over. Gwen is following a similar playbook, but she's adding a digital twist that feels very 2024. She isn't just removing a song, she is reclaiming her space. Think about it. When you marry a massive country star like Blake, you marry his catalog. You accept that your private feelings are going to be broadcast on the radio to millions of people. But when that song starts to hurt, when it becomes a source of pain instead of joy, you can't just turn off the radio because you are living in the singer's house. Gwen deleting that track from the Vimeo link is her way of taking back control over her own environment. It's like she's saying, I control what I hear in my own home. It's a boundary being set with a sledgehammer. But this raises a massive question about what happens next. If she is willing to erase the first dance, what else is on the chopping block? Are we going to see photos disappearing from Instagram next? That is usually the second domino to fall. We saw it with Kelly and Brandon. First came the rumors, then the silence, then the digital purge. It's a modern breakup ritual. You sanitize your feed to sanitize your heart. But for Blake, this must feel like a betrayal of the highest order. He wrote that song. It is his intellectual property, sure, but more importantly, it is his emotional property. Imagine writing a poem for your wife, framing it, and hanging it on the wall. Then you come home one day to find she has white-outed the words, but left the empty frame hanging there. That is what this is. The video is still there. The visual of them dancing remains. But the soul of the moment, the music, is gone. It creates a ghostly effect. Watching two people dance to nothing is creepy. And maybe that is the perfect metaphor for where they are right now. Out of step. We have to consider the pressure cooker they are living in. Between The Voice, their separate tours, the Vegas residencies, and the constant tabloid speculation, finding time to actually be married is hard. Maybe the silence on the video represents the silence in their home. Maybe they haven't had a real conversation in weeks, and the video edit was Gwen's way of screaming for attention without saying a word. It is a desperate move. You don't sabotage your own wedding memories unless you are in deep pain. And let's not forget the fans. We are the ones who streamed Nobody But You millions of times. We bought into the fairy tale. When they mess with that narrative, they are messing with us too. It feels personal. We invested in their happiness because it gave us hope. Watching them crumble feels like watching a friend go through a divorce. That is why this story is blowing up. It is not just about a song, it is about the fragility of forever.
I don't know why I cry, but I think it's 'cause I remember for the first time.
If Blake and Gwen can't make it work with all their money and success, what hope is there for the rest of us? But I want to circle back to something vital. The source said Gwen did this after finding old photos. This implies a comparison game. Comparison is the thief of joy, guys. If she is looking at the past and feeling like the present doesn't measure up, that is a danger zone. It leads to impulsive decisions like deleting files at 3 a.m. It is a moment of weakness that unfortunately left a permanent scar. Now, put yourself in Blake's boots for a second. Really try to feel that. You play that link for a friend, expecting to show off your beautiful wife and your hit song, and you get hit with dead air. The embarrassment is one thing, but the fear is another. That silence tells him she is checking out. It tells him that his voice, literally and metaphorically, is being tuned out. How do you come back from that? How do you go to work the next day and sit in a red chair and joke? Around when you know your wife is erasing you at home? The parallel with Kelly Clarkson is impossible to ignore. Kelly tried to keep it together for years for the sake of her image and her kids, but eventually the truth had to come out. She had to rip the Band-Aid off. Gwen is teasing the Band-Aid. She is peeling up the edges to see how much it hurts. It is a testing phase. She is testing Blake's reaction. Will he fight for the audio? Will he demand she put it back? Or will he let the silence win? His reaction of sitting there for 10 minutes without a word is telling. He didn't rage. He didn't throw the phone. He absorbed the blow. That sounds like a man who is tired. A man who knows that arguing won't bring the music back. It is a resignation. And resignation is the death knell of a marriage. Anger is hot, resignation is cold. And that video is now freezing cold. We also need to talk about the private nature of this link. It was meant for close friends. By altering it, she was sending a message to their inner circle too. She was letting their friends know that things aren't okay. It is a soft launch of a separation. It is a way of preparing people for bad news without having to actually say the words. Hey, notice how the song is gone? Yeah, read between the lines. So what happens now? Does the song go back up? I doubt it. Once you ring that bell, you can't unring it. The silence is now part of their story. Every time they look at that wedding video, even if they fix the audio later, they will remember the time it was gone. They will remember the fight, the 3 a.m. edit, the pain. It taints the memory. That is the tragedy of digital anger. It leaves a timestamp.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stand a little taller.
In the end, this isn't just about a celebrity couple. It is about how we handle the end of love in the digital age. We delete, we block, we unfollow. We try to curate our past to make the present less painful. But Gwen is learning that you can delete the file, but you can't delete the feeling. The silence she created is louder than the song ever was. And now, Blake has to decide if he is going to try to sing over the silence, or if he is going to put the guitar down and walk away. What do you think? Is deleting the wedding song a deal breaker, or just a bad night? And does this remind you of the warning signs we saw with Kelly? I honestly want to hear your take in the comments because this story feels far from over. Usually when the music stops, the lights come up and everyone goes home. Let's hope that isn't what is happening here.